Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. It is 6:30, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And we are recording this session in case you didn't get the little notification when you signed on. But thank you for taking time out of your evening today to join us. My name is Alana Elkins, and I am the Assistant Director at Penn GSE's Center for Professional Learning. And I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Zachary Herman, who is the Executive Director at the Center for Professional Learning at Penn GSE as well. And we're really looking forward to sharing some information with you today on our newest certificate program, which is Leadership for Employee Engagement. So to go over a few things, just our agenda for today, we are going to give you a brief program overview as well as some just general program expectations, provide you with a session schedule that we will also go into some further detail on. You'll get to hear from two of our program faculty. We will discuss home teams and what those are and what they look like in our programs. And then we will talk about action plans, which are the overarching assessment for our program. And then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So if you do have questions along the way, please feel free to put those in the chat or in the Q&A feature on Zoom. So to go ahead and get us started, this program addresses the impact of the Great Resignation, something that is very timely and at the center of a lot of people's attention right now in their organization. How can we best engage our employees? What are some actionable solutions that we can present to foster that engagement and to foster a happy and inclusive, fulfilling organizational culture? So through our program, the goal is to provide you with some strategic tools, frameworks, research on these topics to help you identify problems and leverage these opportunities to best strengthen your team and your organization as a whole. So this is a 6-month program. Within those 6 months, we will go through 4 different modules, and you'll get to see those and what they cover in just a minute. There will be 15 live sessions hosted on Zoom. And there will also be some asynchronous learning components that are made up of readings, reflections, action plans, discussions, things like that. So what sets us apart? Why do you want to take a program with us here at Penn GSE? So for starters, we have an executive cohort format, which is really developed for working professionals. It's really fast-paced, but also flexible. And with the inclusion of asynchronous and synchronous components, it really gives you the opportunity to take on the course responsibilities on your own terms at your leisure, and to also be able to apply them into your day-to-day work. We have live sessions, which are wonderful because it gives you the opportunity to engage firsthand with our Penn GSE faculty and other community leaders that are very knowledgeable on all of the topics that we'll be discussing to really foster employee engagement. And then something that is very unique to the Center for Professional Learning at Penn GSE is home teams. And so I'd like to discuss home teams further, but in doing so, I want to introduce my colleague, Dr. Zachary Herman, and he's going to talk through a little bit more about home teams in general and what you can expect from those. So go ahead, Zachary.
Thank you, Dr. Elkins. Yes, it's great to be here and talk a little bit more about the Leadership for Employee Engagement program. As Alana said, we believe there are several things that set us apart, not just in this program, but all of our programs across the Penn Graduate School of Education. And one is this approach that we use called home teams, where we create a smaller community within a larger cohort. An opportunity for leaders and team members to connect with each other, provide coaching to one another, provide additional support, and just form stronger relationships within the broader cohort. And we've heard from many of our learners that their experience within their home teams provide kind of more customized, more responsive experience for the program. And those relationships last well beyond the tenure of the program. So we're excited to bring that aspect into this, our newest certificate program.
Great. Thank you, Zachary. So some just general expectations from the program. You'll be able to see them bulleted out here on the screen. But mostly, you know, like I said, we designed this as an executive format for working professionals. So although there are 15 live sessions and those sessions are required, we also understand that there might be a circumstance that you might not be able to attend a session. And we ask that if you already know that you can't make 4 sessions or more than 4 sessions, to maybe consider if this is the right timing for you to take this program. We will have a future cohort, so maybe it might be best to consider a future cohort if you've realized that the timing of the schedule just doesn't work for you in the upcoming months. But we will have a lot of robust learning community opportunities for you to engage in fruitful discussion with everyone that's involved, whether it's home team members, others outside of your home team, just in the general cohort, and also the faculty and facilitators throughout the program. And so, making sure that communication is always clear and respectful with everyone involved, and just to participate fully and to get as much out of this experience as possible, because at the end of the day, we are all lifelong learners here at Penn GSE, and we hope to carry that along to you throughout the program as well. So making sure you're able to fully engage and communicate with everyone as best as possible. And then there will be the overarching assignment, which we'll talk more about in just a minute, is an action plan. And so while that won't be graded, and you won't have to submit it to us or to a faculty member, you will be required to present your action plan to your home team. So that is an expectation going into this, that you will be able to present that and get some feedback so that you can then take that action plan to your organization and take the steps necessary to implement it. So I want to just give a brief overview of the session schedule, and we will send out in the next day or so a more detailed schedule with dates and times so that you can start checking your calendar now and making sure that this timing is right for you. But just to give you a general overview, these are the 4 modules. Their topics are a changing context, culture and belonging, leading teams, and leading forward. And as you can see, we cover a lot of ground in 6 months, but the hope is that it's all things that are relevant to you, to your organization, to your teams, that you can then create an actionable plan and implement it, as you go through this program and at the end of the program. So this is our schedule as of now, and I will follow up, like I said, in the next couple of days with a detailed copy so that you can start looking at your calendars now. And so to give some insight into the topics that we'll be exploring throughout this program, we're going to hear from 2 of our program faculty today. One is from Raquel Arredondo, who is our Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion here at Penn GSE. She will be leading a session titled Creating a Culture of Belonging. And she couldn't join us this evening, but she did record a conversation with me to share with all of you on just a general topic that she'll be covering in her session. And then Zachary will also share a little bit about his upcoming session as well. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my video and mute myself so that I can play this video of my conversation with Raquel. Joining us. So for everyone watching this, Raquel Arredondo is our Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion here at the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education. And Raquel will be leading a session in our Leadership for Employee Engagement certificate program starting in June. And so we wanted to spend some time today just having a top level conversation, something that you can expect to hear more in-depth detail on from Raquel during her session. But today we're just going to talk a little bit about psychological safety. So Raquel, do you want to, let us know a little bit about the background of psychological safety? What is it?
Sure. So, psychological safety has been on my mind lately. As we all know, within the past couple of years, there's been a tipping point in terms of social response and corporate response to diversity, equity, and inclusion within their organizations. And, I think that we've seen a number of organizations, institutions responding to that by hiring folks such as myself to be in roles to oversee and to lead and to advise in all places and spaces DEI. But an area that I feel that we really need to begin prioritizing is this idea of psychological safety, which was created by Dr. Amy Edmondson from Harvard. And, for me, this is really the crux. This is where we where the rubber hits the road and truly demonstrate that an organization does value and prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, because you can have all of those facets in an organization, but if your workforce, if your teams, if your employees do not feel that safety in order to come into work as their authentic selves or to contribute authentically and take risks with ideas and concepts, then we really aren't being completely inclusive in creating that culture of belonging within our organization. And so for me, with the work that I'm doing, it's really been lately about educating on, what is psychological safety and how do we create that in our environment.
Great, thank you. So for anyone who might feel like they could incorporate more psychological safety into their organization, what's just the first step that someone could take to really facilitate that, to create that safe space?
For me, one of the priorities in creating psychological safety is in doing a self-assessment and to take that time to understand where your biases may live, where your limitations may be. And most importantly, when in meetings or, in your day-to-day, being aware of those triggers and how your body responds to a comment or an email or a dynamic. And again, taking that pause to try to understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? What is it triggering in me? Why am I being triggered with this feeling that that is so uncomfortable? Is it challenging a belief? Or is it challenging a theory that I have? And then taking that deeper dive into yourself to do that work to understand, well, this has been my experience up until this point. Maybe I need to do a little further work on myself to expand my knowledge and my cultural competencies, whatever that might be, so that I can truly understand, this dynamic going on here. But, typically it's, that first level is to really take to heart and to do that work internally before you can move externally.
What are some ways, just in your experience, that people feel psychologically unsafe at work?
So, little things such as comments that are made that, microaggressions, unconscious biases, a sense as if you need to show up perfect, and fear that you will contribute a thought to a discussion, or that the work that you are proposing or that you have completed, that you're going to be attacked for that, and not even, a full-blown attack, but it can just be, not taken seriously within a meeting, or your ideas are dismissed, or it can be as something as pointed as someone questioning, well, where did you get that data from? Or, that doesn't align with the way that we think here. Those types of comments definitely contribute to this sense of not feeling psychologically safe, not feeling as if you can take a risk and provide an opposing view, or just being able to share an idea that may not align with the status quo. Those are some of the signs right there.
Those are great. And I think, a lot of people in today's workforce feel that on the daily. Are there any words of wisdom or advice for those who might feel psychologically unsafe? Like if someone came to me as their manager and said, I feel psychologically unsafe in this space, what's a good response? How do you manage that?
It's tough because, if it's a peer going up to their manager, then, you're risking a lot, risking that your manager is not going to take you seriously or is going to be offended or defensive in that moment. This is a dynamic that works top down and bottom up. In order to truly create psychological safety, you really need to see it demonstrated by leaders. And so when I talk to managers and supervisors, that's something, that I embed in our conversation, is that they need to demonstrate that they too are not infallible. They need to acknowledge when people do take risks and present a different or an opposing viewpoint. They need to create a culture in which people are motivated to think outside of the box and are rewarded for coming up with opposing views. Again, it's not about attacking anyone, a person specifically. It's about really scrutinizing ideas and looking at problems or processes through a variety of lenses. For an individual, you can have that conversation very cautiously. Being able to reach out to possibly another respected leader within the organization to have that conversation, that can be helpful. But, these are things that as you are growing within your career, as you are determining, whether this is a great role for you, if you are in a space in which you'll be able to thrive, they're tough questions to ask, because it could be very much so the answer is, you need to leave that supervisor or that organization. Just hope that within exit interview data that will come back and somebody will help coach that leader. But it's so critical for individuals to feel as if they are welcomed and to thrive within an organization, to have that culture created.
Thank you so much, Raquel. This was, as always, we have so many conversations, but I always love hearing you talk about psychological safety. And my hope is that so many of those watching this will want to hear more, and, we'll get more of this type of conversation and in-depth detail and conversation through your session in our Leadership for Employee Engagement program. So thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And yeah, looking forward to your session coming soon.
Absolutely. And I'm excited for this session because we'll talk about, specific takeaways and things that individuals can start doing today. So very excited to go a lot deeper and to have those conversations to really uncover how folks can take this knowledge and bring it to the next level.
Awesome. Thanks, Raquel.
Thank you.
So I hope that gave everybody a little bit of insight as to what they can expect from Raquel's session on creating a culture of belonging. And so with that,
all right.
Hi, Raquel. So sorry.
Hi,
Thank you. There we go. Next slide. So now Zachary is going to share a little bit about what his session will entail, rethinking team effectiveness. So take it away, Zachary.
Thank you, Alana. Yes, so I teach leadership courses here at the Penn Graduate School of Education, as well as negotiations at the Wharton School. And what I really think a lot about and care a lot about is how people work together to solve complex problems. And inevitably, we think a lot about teams and how to create highly effective teams. So a lot of my work is thinking about what are the factors that go into team effectiveness. And one of the things that we've realized is that a lot of people have very narrow conceptions about what it means for a team to be effective. A lot of people equate team effectiveness with how they perform. And certainly performance is one critical aspect of team effectiveness. We wouldn't consider a team effective if it's not performing at high levels. But that's also a relatively narrow conception of what it means for a team to be effective. So in this session, we're going to explore two other dimensions, how to cultivate them, how to measure them, how to reinforce these other dimensions. So beyond team effectiveness, the second dimension is a team's shared capacity to learn and grow. Is this team able to learn from its failures, learn from its successes? Is it able to adapt and adjust to changes in the environment or changes in the context? Is it able to be agile and flexible and adaptive as circumstances change? We have seen some teams that are high-performing teams, but then when something changes in the context, they're not able to make that pivot, and they become very quickly low-performing teams. So that second dimension of team effectiveness is this learning and adapting and how agile a team can be. The third dimension is individual well-being and development. And this speaks a little bit to what Raquel was talking about with psychological safety, that the third dimension really explores what is the team's impact on the individual members of the team. Do team members feel satisfied? Do they feel a sense of belonging? Are they growing and developing as a result of being on the team? Or is the team a source of frustration or anxiety or even stress for the team? And we know that we can have teams that are high performing, teams that are reaching all of their objectives and their benchmarks and their goals, but everyone hates being on the team. People are quitting, people are leaving, or people are exhausted or burned out. And we wouldn't consider that team fully effective. We also know that there are plenty of teams where people feel great, they feel a sense of belonging, but they're not performing at the way that we would want them to perform. And we wouldn't call those teams highly effective either. And so it's in this combination of these three dimensions: team performance, a team's shared capacity to learn and grow, and individual member well-being and development that provides us a more holistic picture of team effectiveness. So in this session that I'll be leading, we'll be talking about how to measure and kind of assess where your team might be along these dimensions. We'll talk about how to cultivate these dimensions and different strategies team leaders can employ to make sure that they're leading highly effective teams. So really looking forward to meeting some of you in the future and sharing this session with you all.
Great, thank you, Zachary. And while we're on this topic, we do have a question in the Q&A. And Christina asks, will the program also address external factors that contribute to the internal thoughts described within the context of psychological safety? More specifically, will the facilitators or instructors name and make a space for dialogue on the cultural biases living within the university that actively influence such thoughts to steer away from internalized shame?
I can speak a little bit to this. One of the things that we talk about, at least with highly effective teams, one of the conditions of team effectiveness is a supportive social context. All teams exist within a broader context. So if I'm leading a team within an organization, I have some control and some power of how we develop the culture of that team, but it's also existing within a broader social context of the organization, of the city, of society. And so some consider the team leader's role as actually creating some barriers between some of the harmful influences, external influences that might get in the way of team effectiveness and members of the team, to try to minimize some of the unproductive or problematic influences that often permeate various aspects of our teams, our individuals, our team members, and so on. Creating, again, to psychological safety, creating the shared space to have dialogue, to raise concerns, to kind of explicitly talk and name and process some of these factors that are getting in the way. I think that's one of the challenges that so many managers and supervisors and leaders are feeling, this sense of lack of control over all of the things that are existing in our world, in our organizations, in our communities, and not sure what to do. And the reality is that what they can do as individuals is quite limited. And that's kind of this shared capacity to learn and grow dimension of team effectiveness. How do we create highly adaptive teams that are able to actually make sense of these conflicting or confounding factors that are influencing what's impacting the team, but also collectively develop and implement solutions to try to address them?
Great. Thank you, Zachary. And Christina, thank you for your question. Let me go ahead and continue sharing my screen. So the next thing I wanted to touch on in the remaining time that we have is the action plan that I mentioned, which, as I said, is the overarching assessment for this program. So as you participate and collaborate over the course of the 6-month program, you will be developing an action plan that you'll be able to then implement within your organization. So when developing your action plan, you'll begin by identifying a problem of practice, which should focus on an observable issue within your organization's control to improve on. So for example, what is keeping employees from being engaged in your organization? You'll then identify SMART goals to address the problem of practice and to then develop a rationale that can expand on the goals that you set and how you intend to address them. Those rationales should be rooted in the theories, frameworks, conversations that you gather insight on throughout the duration of the program. And then at the end, you'll be able to present these action plans to your home team and gather that feedback before the end of the program to then be able to implement. So that's a little bit of detail on the action plan. So then lastly, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or type them in the Q&A spot. But yeah, we're looking forward to hearing from each of you if you have any questions. And we can address those in the remaining few minutes that we have.
I'll just add, while we're seeing if there are any other questions, one of the things that I'm really excited about for this program is the diversity of faculty that we're having teach. So we have individuals that have worked in university settings, we have individuals that work in corporate settings, nonprofit settings, government settings. We're really drawing on a diverse range of professional settings to take insights for what are different kind of fields doing, how are they approaching these challenges, and we expect our cohort to be equally as diverse. And I think that's one of the strengths of many of our programs here at Penn GSE is the cohort and the power of learning from other people and learning from the perspectives of people in vastly different contexts than you are, but as maybe a source of insight or inspiration as you are struggling with similar challenges.
Great, Zachary. Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. So if there are no questions, I just want to go ahead and share this final slide with some contact information. So like I mentioned at the beginning, Zachary and I both work at the Center for Professional Learning. So our email address is listed there. And you can also reach out to me directly and I can answer any questions that you might have. My email is listed for you there as well. And then I will also put a link to the program website into the chat for you so that in case anyone wants to visit the site, or maybe go ahead and start working on their application, you have that option as well. So let me pull up that link and drop it in chat.
I just put it in.
Oh,
there.
you got it. Thank you, Zachary. I appreciate that. Great. Well, we really appreciate your time this evening. Again, thank you for joining. And we look forward to answering any future questions that you have and or seeing you in our first cohort for this brand new program that we are so excited to be launching. Like I said, it's a very timely topic, and I know it is being greatly felt in all of our networks and organizational communities. So please let us know if we can answer any questions, but enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.